How much of your current distress is a direct result of external circumstances, and how much is fueled by your own thoughts and reactions? Hello, listeners. Welcome back to The Science of Self, where you improve your life from the inside out. How to Suffer Well by Peter Hollins is our featured book today. We're pulling from Chapter 3. In today's episode, we'll talk about facing your suffering head-on in order to transform it. By mastering the art of separating pain from suffering, you can ease your burden and find peace. We'll dive deep into each feeling, dissecting facts from opinions to release attachments and reduce suffering forever. In exploring the causes of suffering, we're already beginning to sketch out some possible ways to overcome it, at least according to Buddhist tradition. We look to the second and third noble truth and see that because the cause of suffering is attachment, we can let go of suffering by letting go of attachment. Simple, right? In theory, anyway. Finding a way to genuinely release our attachments and desires is, according to most practitioners, a life's work. We're conditioned by our culture, we're shaped by our early childhood experiences, and we're all innately primed to grasp, want, and cling rather than to flow and accept reality for what it is. Everyone suffers, and it's no mean feat to tackle that directly. Think about your life right now. What form does suffering take for you? Perhaps you're depressed or anxious, or you have relationship troubles. Maybe you struggle at work or with finances. Maybe you have an addiction, or maybe your problems seem vast, abstract, and difficult to pin down. Maybe the main form your suffering takes is that you're confused about what's wrong in the first place. You just know you feel bad, but you can't say why or identify a clear path out of the trouble. Exercise 1. Distinguishing between pain and suffering. Let's begin by simplifying things. The different shapes that suffering can take are truly endless. There might be layer upon layer of suffering, and suffering can feel like a knot made of other knots. How do you even begin to untie it all? A great first step to help you find clarity and hopefully a sense of calm is to tease apart what is pain and what is suffering. The Buddhist story of the second dart explains this difference clearly. The unavoidable pains in life are called first darts because they're like an arrow someone shoots at us. These hurt. However, the second darts are our thoughts, reactions, and responses to the first darts. That's so unfair. It's like we shoot ourselves again with another arrow. No longer pain, but suffering. If we want to start identifying our role in maintaining pain, i.e. suffering, we can start by noting the difference between pain and suffering. One way to do this is to slow everything right down so you can look closely at the cascade of thoughts, feelings, and behaviors that occur after a painful experience. What can happen is that in our attempt to improve our lives, feel better, or fix things, we focus on the second darts. We get carried away with the stories we tell and only end up creating even more confusion and second and third and fourth darts. Instead, it helps you just pause and look at what is actually concrete fact out there in the world and what's happening inside us, i.e., what exists only as interpretation, expectation, ego, or narrative. The next time you find yourself unhappy or suffering, stop, become aware, and get a journal to help you tease things apart. First, just become aware of what's happening to you without judgment. For example, you may have just had an upsetting argument with a friend, and so you sit down with your journal. To do a dump of everything that's in your heart and mind, you write down the following. I feel really angry. I don't know if I want to be his friend anymore. He thinks he's so much smarter than everyone, and I'm sick of it. I thought we were friends. Why is this happening? What have I done for him to start acting like this? He told me I'm an idiot, but I think he's an idiot. And on and on. Without trying to judge or interpret, you just write down what's in your heart and mind. Then, when you feel you've captured the gist of it, stop and take a look at what you've written. Now, draw 2 columns on a piece of paper, one labeled first darts and the other second darts. Spend the next 10 or 20 minutes deciding which column to place each of your thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. This may take some care. You want to identify which part of your experience is a simple fact of life, part of reality, and an unavoidable truth, and which part is coming from you, i.e., your attachment. It may be easier at first to simply imagine you're sifting through fact versus opinion. Imagine a completely neutral third party was writing a bland news article about the situation. What would they say was pure fact? For example, let's take the statement, "He's wrong to play the victim when he's the one who's being a bully." This may be a sincerely held feeling, but in truth, it's not an objective part of reality. Rather, it's a belief and interpretation that comes from your perspective. It's definitely a second dart. Likewise, "He's an idiot" is an opinion, whereas "He told me I'm an idiot" is plain fact. "We shouldn't have said that" is a second dart, and likely something that's causing more suffering than the pain of the first dart. Sometimes certain statements of thought and feeling hint at deeper underlying expectations. For example, "I thought we were friends" suggests a deeper expectation, i.e., we used to be friends, and I was expecting that we would always be friends. Again, this is a second dart. It's our desire for an outcome for the situation rather than the situation itself. If you look at the above list, it may start to become clear just how little is fact, or a first dart. If you remove expectation, interpretation, and attachment, you might be left with very little indeed. "My friend and I argued, he called me an idiot, and we may not continue to be friends." It may take you some time to pick apart situations in this way, at least at first. Often things get confusing because we mix up facts and opinions. But though it takes time, it's worth unmixing these things and just looking at what is on one side and what our reaction is on the other side. Once you do this, you'll start to gain a certain clarity. When you feel like you've thoroughly dissected the situation, ask yourself the following questions. What is the reality of my situation right now? What are the facts? In what ways am I adding second darts to the situation? In this situation, what is pain and what is suffering? What can I control here and what is out of my control? What beliefs, expectations, and interpretations are extending or adding to the pain right now? Here's another simpler example. You notice you have a headache and feel miserable. You stop and ask, what is pain and what is suffering? You realize that your head literally hurts right now, but that your mind is also filled with a whole slew of thoughts along the lines of, "This couldn't have come at a worse time. I'm so busy today." And "I had too much coffee. That'll serve me right. I really have to fix up my lifestyle." Or, "I wonder if it's brain cancer." By simply doing this, you separate out what is pain and what is suffering, what is under your control and what isn't. Then you give yourself the option to choose. You can take a painkiller or sit somewhere quietly while you wait for the inevitable pain of the headache to pass, which it will. And maybe, since it's entirely unnecessary, you decide not to get carried away with self-talk about the headache, which only makes things worse. You have a headache, you accept that you do, and somehow the problem is much, much simpler. Knowing how to discern between fact and opinion or between first and second darts won't make all your problems disappear, but it will stop you from making them bigger than they have to be or holding on to them long after they've naturally moved on. Once again, our featured book was How to Suffer Well. In this book, Peter Hollins explores the profound wisdom that suffering is an inevitable part of life, but how we respond to it can shape our resilience and personal growth. By distinguishing between pain and suffering, understanding the nature of attachment, and cultivating a disciplined awareness, we can transform hardship into a source of strength and clarity. I'll leave you with this quote from William James. "The greatest weapon against stress is our ability to choose one thought over another."